Welcome to the Organizational Maneuverability Radio Show, Defying Gravity so your team can soar at altitude, with host Marshall Goldsmith, Executive Coach Randy Swaim. And this is Marshall Goldsmith, Executive Coach Randy Swaim, and welcome to our Organizational Maneuverability podcast today. Definitely glad to have anybody listening that is interested in it, and definitely looking forward to the concept today. And it's going to be a good show, some good insights that are being brought. And what I'll just simply say is I'll just introduce to you our guest today, who is Gianni Roberts. And I'm going to let him have an opportunity to kind of introduce himself and tell you a little bit about his background and what he's done and everything. And then what we'll do is we'll kind of zoom in on the concept and it's a good concept that he wants to bring. So with that being the case, Gianni, go ahead and introduce yourself, and look forward to it.
Oh. Thank you, Randy. Thank you, first of all, for having me here, and I appreciate the platform. My name is Gianni Roberts. I've worked in the aerospace industry for 15 plus years. I've started out with working with the turbines all the way to now it's within the safety features of the airplanes, mostly oxygen systems. I've always took a joy in building a great team, a successful team. It definitely makes you feel accomplished when you go home. And obviously, if you feel accomplished, you love your job, days go by great. And especially when you enjoy what you're doing, it's just a feeling accomplishment it's a great feeling to be able to go home to every day. So
makes for a great life when you're really loving what you're doing, right?
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
Cool.
Makes life a lot easier.
Yeah, that's true. So, and I know you said that one of the things in your past, I think you mentioned that you were looking to maybe be an astronaut, but just with all that, with changes and everything, you moved in a different direction, which is cool. And because we all have to sort of do that sometimes. But you have my compliments for what you're working on, because that is so critical, certainly in today's world. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's humans aren't supposed to fly, but we do. So it's actually amazing when you see what goes into all the planes and the quality and stuff that has to go through to make sure that they stay up in the air.
Yeah. As a pilot, that's always a good thing. No two ways about it. So. Yeah, cool. Well, I'll tell you what, let me ask you this, just because I know that you've had a good background in, for, like you said, for the last 15 years in working on the stuff that you've been worked on, and also working with teams and stuff. And so with that being the case, if you're good with the introduction, then you can take a couple minutes and just kind of introduce the basic concept that you think you wanted to bring, and then you can kind of expand on it and talk a little bit about some of your experiences and things of that nature. So go ahead and feel free.
Okay. Yeah. So I've always, I always played sports, so I always liked to be part of a team. And when I got into having to work the rest of my life, and it was kind of the dog days of your life, I guess you could say. It's when you're on a winning team, it's totally different than if you just go on and you spend your day at work and doing stuff. And when I got into leadership, it was the first couple of teams I was on. They weren't too successful, and it was very time consuming to try to get people to work together, and it was the days drawn out. They were long days. You're working 10, 12, 13, 14 hours a day to accomplish the goals that were set forth. And it took a lot to try to get everybody to work together. And
with just what you're saying there, that's a good point. And you don't have to share any names or anything like that, but just what were some of the aspects that you experienced when teams were struggling with that and it wasn't happening? Were there certain things that kind of stood out to you that you noticed that that's part of the things that needs to change or whatever, and all that. Was there anything there that comes to your mind?
Yeah, you got people that have been they're working at jobs for years upon years. You got some 20 years, 15 years, 10 years. You don't see that as much anymore. But when I first got into the workforce, you had your seasoned veterans that were doing everything, and aerospace is highly regulated, so you basically have to follow the book. And somebody that's been doing it for 20 years, they follow the book their way and not the way that you're basically supposed to. They're doing everything the right way. They're doing everything correctly. But when you're actually looking at a training and you're being trained on how to stay within the regulations and stuff like that, there's a lot more things that the seasoned people kind of push away to the side because there's no need for them. Let me rephrase. It's not that there's no need for them. It's just that they know how to get the end result without having to do every single thing, every single step. So if that makes sense.
You know what? It totally does make sense. And one of the things you're describing is how your brain can get in the way sometimes of what you're really trying to accomplish and everything. And it is, it is very important, because a lot of people do have a tendency sometimes to do that just to get through it, kind of thing. And so, good point. That can happen in a lot of industries and for a lot of teams out there. And it's a good point. No two ways about it.
Yeah. And then especially with the seasoned veterans, they really, you got the certain ones that'll help out anybody, and then you got the ones that keep all their information to themselves. So it's hard to pull information from somebody that's going to stay secluded like that within their little comfort zone. And you got the seasoned veterans that will be telling the newbies, I guess we would call them, more or less in the workforce, but greenies or whatever you want to call them. Somebody that's been doing it for multiple years can go up and say, hey, well, try it this way or try it that way. And the newer people don't have the technical expertise to be able to grasp the concept of, oh, well, yeah, that's a good idea. If you use the file this way or a grinder this way or a welder, it's really the concept of doing all that with somebody that's new. If you don't have a step-by-step procedure, standard work, or whatever you want to work instructions, whatever you want to call it, it's really hard to get them into gaining that technical knowledge that they need to where they can actually work alone and work on their own without too much supervision.
And you know what? You have a good point there. Let me just say very clearly, and this comes from the neuroscience background, but what happens a lot of times when that is done is people take the processing of their brain and just shut it off and just sort of go through the motions of stuff. And like you just said, very often when factors come on scene, they don't have the processing ability to really see how much they may need to tweak this a little bit to take the steps that they've got to do and get it done right. And sometimes it means a little bit of a change. Sometimes it may be a little bit more of a change. But, that aspect of the thinking is what is so missing in a lot of people.
Yeah, definitely. And that thinking is what puts quality, into the work that you're doing. And especially in aerospace, quality is probably the number one thing that has to be done on a daily basis on every second of your job.
Yeah.
If you don't have the quality, and the parts don't have the quality, it's not like it's the way I try to explain it to a lot of the people is, you got like your medical industry and then you got your aerospace industry, and you can work on your medical, you can not have the best quality for a replacement hip and you're hurting one person. And, you might not have the quality on a turbine blade or a seat or something in an airplane. And, you're affecting 400 people sometimes, 500 people sometimes, depending on what airplane you're on. So and a lot of people don't understand that until you explain it to them. Then it actually scares some people when you start explaining it to them like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times in factors too, when a factor comes on scene, sometimes it's critical that you just get it down and get it fixed right now. And other times, maybe not quite so much, but it's just kind of, having that clarity really in what you're going to do. And this is what we got to do right this second, to fix whatever, kind of thing. And this is how we need to bind together, as you're saying correctly, that's a key aspect in a lot of teams out there that is often missing.
Yeah, definitely. I know a lot of especially it wasn't as the pandemic has changed a lot of things. It's kind of crazy how much things have changed, but you got so many generations within the work groups now, and you can look at a team and you have any generations from people getting ready to retire to people that are just entry level. I mean, it's always been like that, but ever since we allowed people not to have to work for a year and a half, or whatever they had to work for, it's changed a lot of things. Like, you got the seasoned people that they have a totally different work ethic than somebody that's 20 to 30 years old, and you got the older folks that go to work and they go to do their job, and they have that work ethic to where I'm at work, I'm doing my job. I'm going to take my break when I'm allowed to. I'm going to take my lunch when I'm allowed to, and I'm going to do the best quality work that I can. And then you got the in-betweens that it's a gap between the newer age and the older agers. And you got the newer people that, they come to work and they really expect to be able to use their cell phones. They expect to take a 2-minute break when they want to, or, they get done with working on a part, they check their messages and stuff like that. And it's really, it causes a lot of conflict within the teams. And then you got the people that are in between those. I call them watchers, basically, is that they're watching both of the parts of the team. And you got the younger people, which are kind of like limit testers. They'd like to test every limit that's out there. And you got the totally engaged people on the team, and it's really hard. I had a lot of trouble at first bringing all that together because I'm an older guy, so I have that work ethic.
You and me both. Yeah.
Yep, and I actually grew up in upstate New York, so I worked on farms when I was a kid, and cool. Actually kind of glad I did, because it really pounded in a good work ethic in my eyes. And it was just trying to get the younger generations to be congruently working with the older generations, and trying to make a congruent team working together from start to finish. It was actually quite interesting. I learned a lot from both generations. I mean, you need to have empathy at sometimes, but not too much and not too little. Trying to build a great team, it's not the easiest thing in the world. You can have a mediocre team, and they can come and do their job. But if you want to have a successful team and be able to put stretch goals out there and not have to worry about hitting those, because it just comes naturally with a great team. And when it's like a machine, everybody always says like a well-oiled machine. It's the truth. It's when everybody's working together, and they don't have to sit there and agree with everything, but they have to be respectful. They can respectfully disagree with things, but at the end, we all have to come together and work together as a team. I mean, that's in sports. That's how you win championships. So it's not like it's.
It is. Yeah. And let me ask you this, because everything you're saying is dead on target. No two ways about it. In a lot of, particularly with, as you said correctly, so with different generations and all of that. And I know with something that you said, I know the listeners know that my autobiography has been published out there on Amazon, and the development process through a couple of decades of my life has been huge for me, to make me much better with kind of how I connect with people and stuff. But let me ask you this, with what you're talking about, because you're right, you're talking about the different generations, different people that have, been there for 30 years and have their way of doing it, and the younger generations and all of that kind of stuff. With that kind of thing, because you mentioned some of the aspects that you got to be aware of and stuff. As a leader, what are some of the things in your perspective from what you've experienced coming along? What are some of the things that a leader needs to do a little differently, typically on making that really successful?
Some of the things that really helped me out is you have a lot of different knowledge within the team, and it's you
have my compliments on that. You bet.
And I hate referring back to the older generations to the newer generations, but a lot of that comes down to the generational gap between the knowledge of everything. It's, you have some of the younger guys that they still think outside the box, and some of the older generations, they think within that box, their comfort zone, I call it. And once you're in that comfort zone, you do it day in and day out, it all becomes a habit. The newer guys, the newer generations, they don't have that technical expertise or technical knowledge that they need to be able to come and work as a habit. So one of the things that really helped me out and stands out every time I think about team building is being able to, listen to the team and understand the team, how they work individually. Oops, sorry about that.
Oh, that's okay. No problem.
Just totally had a glitch there.
Part of the adventure.
Yes, it is. Where was I? Yeah, the technical expertise gap is quite. I totally lost my train of thought there.
Oh, well, let me ask you this, because I was asking you about, as a leader, kind of what you need to think about and do differently and have clarity on and vision on and all when you're working with both of those generations. What can a leader do to help bring that to real success and all that? What are some of the things that in your experience and background came to your vision about it? And what are some of the things that a leader, when working with that team of different generations in it, can do?
A lot of it has to do with team communication. I mean, if the team's got to communicate, and if the teams don't communicate, it's almost like a marriage. If you don't communicate, it's going to end. It's going to go to the wayside. But one of the big things that always has helped me, especially recently since the last few years, is morning meetings. We take first 15 minutes of the workday, and we get together and we go over the key performance indicators within the business unit or cell, whatever value stream, whatever you're working at.
Yeah.
And, there's certain things that you have leading indicators and lagging indicators, and you want to take those leading indicators and be able to report those out to the team and let them report to you of what problems they're having. And once you get that and you start following up on that, that's a big factor. And it's not, you just don't have a meeting and then say, oh yeah, thanks for your guys' input and everything. And you actually have to follow up with them. You have to go up and say, hey, you had a great idea, but this idea won't work because of this regulation, or because of we can't use this material, or it's a time constraint, or sometimes, you can buy a machine that's $2 or $3 million and you just can't afford it at that point.
Yeah.
Which it would help the business. But if you actually explain to your workers or to your team members, it's they actually appreciate it a lot more. They understand that you actually took the time. And if you take the time to understand them, they'll take the time to understand you, and they'll take the time to work hard for you.
And that's really an insight for truly building synergy with your team. And that is vital. And in fact, one of the questions I'll just throw out to you in light of what you just were talking about, when you're talking to your folks that they, one of the team members, kind of wants to apply this and stuff, but you said there's a regulation that maybe you can't do that, and you have that conversation with them. One of the questions I might ask them is, say, how can you do that and still meet the regulations? and get them thinking about it, kind of thing. And it may be that they'll say, oh yeah, we really can't do that. Okay. Kind of thing. And it's kind of implied by a couple of things that you said. I think it's really good that when you connect with them in such a way that they sort of experience a degree of really synergy and oneness with you, amazing things can happen. And it doesn't mean you just agree with everything they said, but you can connect with them in such a way that they start doing it. And if you think about from an aspect of leadership, a lot of people don't realize is true synergy and oneness doesn't happen because you dictate and point fingers and threaten. True synergy happens because you model it, and if you don't mind me saying so, that's in part something that you were just saying correctly. So it's very aligned with kind of what I was thinking about that. But those are critical aspects when you're talking about leading your team, particularly with the different generations and different people that envision a little bit differently, think a little bit differently, and all that. That is huge for leaders to understand. So you have my compliments on just mentioning that.
Yeah, well, if the listeners just think about some of the best teams that they've been on, and think about the times that you've gone above and beyond your daily job or your daily grind, whatever you want to call it. It's not, you didn't have a bad boss, or you weren't in a toxic work environment. You were actually you were complacent where you were, and above that. You actually enjoyed being where you were at that time. Mm-hmm. And it only takes one bad leader to change everything. It's amazing that what one bad leader can do.
It is.
But it's also amazing what one good leader can do.
That's right. That's right. And if you think about it, that is true, hugely true in both directions, for good and bad. No two ways about it. And if you think about it, and it's very aligned with what you're saying there, Gianni, it's an aspect of, what really happens when your people want to be on your team. They want to be working together. And it's not something you're dictating. It's something that's within them that's coming out. They want to be a part of this. And that is huge, that a lot of people don't think about. And some of what you're saying is exactly in line with that, in terms of, what makes it so that people want to be in your team, and they want to be working together with others in your team. And that is huge. And it's a critical factor that a lot of people in today's world that just sort of go with rote, superficial academic things don't fully understand. And that's, but it's something that you've kind of illustrated there, but that's a key aspect to it. No two ways about it.
Yep. I haven't, I consider myself, I'm not a millionaire, but I consider myself pretty successful because I am a good team builder. Mm-hmm. And it's, I still get texts from people, phone calls from people saying, hey, next time you're looking for work, let me be back on your team and stuff. And that really makes you feel good when people go out of their way to contact you. And, you always have your superstars, which you always keep within your network. And, a team network is, once you get such a big team network, there's nothing, you're unstoppable basically.
Yeah. And if you don't mind me asking you, because you've kind of hinted at a couple of things, but as a leader, what do you do differently to make that feeling experience with them? What are some of the things that you do differently as a leader that maybe a lot of other people out there do? What are some of those things that you do differently to really create that within your team?
Well, every team member it's a different team, and anybody that thinks that humans think alike, well,
nope.
they got a big surprise coming once they get older, because
that's true.
Everybody thinks differently. Everybody accepts things differently, and even with training, there's a good trainer trains everybody differently. You can't just train step by step and say this is how it does. Everybody grasps everything different. We got a free thinking mind. So when you got a free thinking mind, there's all sorts of different things that people think. And there's been times where I was training people and some of the questions they ask, you're just like, hey, how did you come up with that question?
Where'd that come from?
It makes you think like, wow, it's actually, it's a good point. It doesn't have nothing to do with what we're doing, but it's a good point.
Yeah.
And some people need more empathy. Some people need more praise. And then there's some people that they don't want praise at all. They don't want you to say anything they're doing good about it. And if you do it in public, then you can lose them. So you have to understand I don't know if it's the psychology of the individuals or it's just the mindset. If you understand the mindset and you work with the mindset of that individual, they'll be on board with you.
And I'll tell you, you have my highest compliments on that, Gianni, because I'll tell you, that's an aspect that so many people today don't realize, but realize when you're dealing with different people on your team as a true leader, you don't deal with every one of them the same way. Now, if they're doing something illegal, yeah, you got to kind of come and talk to them, but you don't, and you said this correctly, so you don't deal with them the same way. And that is a key central aspect of what we're talking about. And I know it's getting kind of close to the end on our time and everything, but it's a key aspect with what you just said. And that is right. True leaders understand that each person on your team is a little bit different, and how you bring it and build the synergy and bring it all together, with each person, you interact slightly differently. And you have to have that ability, that flexibility, that vision, and know how to do that very well. And what you just mentioned goes to the heart of that. And that is key that people have to realize. So like I said, I want you to understand, I'm glad that you're on the show, but you have my highest compliments for bringing that point up, because that is a critical point for people that are looking to be leaders, need to understand.
Yeah, I know one point that I do want to point out before the end is
sure.
My title has manager in it, and that's fine. But like I always tell my team, I manage the business. I do not manage people. I lead people. And that's a concept that a lot of people can't grasp, because you don't manage people, you lead people. I mean, there's a big difference between management and leading somebody.
And I'll tell you what, you have my highest compliments on what you just said. I might share that quote with people if that's okay with you.
No,
kind of thing, and give you the credit for the quote, because that is huge. You're right. It's a lot different than most people in today's world sort of understand or realize. And so yeah, it's just, it's a key aspect that you're talking about, and you have my compliments for bringing that. And I know we got about 2 minutes left. So let me just kind of do this before we kind of end and shut down. Just Gianni, any comments that you would like to share? Perhaps summary comments, just some things you want the listeners to remember, or whatever, anything you want to share, go ahead and share that. And then before we close out.
Really, the biggest summary is this: being on a good team, it's totally changes life itself. I mean, you have to work every single day of your life until you retire. And if you're on I don't want to say toxic team, but if you're on a team that doesn't work well together, you wake up in the morning and you're just like, oh, I have to go back. I have to go to work today. And I can't wait to get out of work. I can't wait to go to lunch. I can't wait to go to the bar and have a beer after work because I'm so stressed out. But when you're on a great team and you have good leaders around you, you fall asleep fast. You get a good night's sleep. You wake up in the morning invigorated, and you're like, oh, I can't wait to get to work. I mean, I'm exaggerating a little bit, because nobody loves to go to work, but it's something that on a day-to-day basis. But when you look and you say, oh, I'm going to accomplish my goals today. I'm going to do what I have to do today to get my job done, and go home and either go home alone and play your PlayStations or whatever, or go home to your wife and your kids. And I mean, being in a good work environment, it helps family environment too. It's really, and it's hard to get people to understand how important being in a good work environment changes your life. It's incredible.
And you know what? You have my highest compliments for that too, because that's what I was thinking, and I was going to mention it. But you're right. When you're treating your people right, you're not just affecting their stuff at work, but their families are better. Their families are more comfortable. Their mindset in their life is more comfortable. And so the impact that you have as a good leader is even better than most people realize. So you have my high compliments on how you shared that.
Oh, thank you.
Well, I'll tell you what, any last minute comments just before we close up?
No, I think we did pretty good, actually. I think it's went pretty good. So
good deal. Well, I'll tell you what, I know we're at about the 30-minute mark here. And so just for the listeners, again, this is Executive Coach Randy Swaim on the Organizational Maneuverability podcast. And very honored and pleased to have had Gianni Roberts on my show today. And I just, I appreciate what he brought, and very valuable to people that are listening. So glad that people listen. I know, Gianni, you probably are aware of this, but the show will be actually posted on the Podcast Business News Network platform, and it'll be on my YouTube also. So if anybody wants to kind of share it, they can do that and stuff. So, but it's been an honor to have you here, Gianni, and just want to say, appreciate that the listeners can get some value out of what you talked about and what you brought. And so just been a great time.
Well, thank you for having me. And yes, it's been an honor to be with you. And, you know, if I can just improve one team today, that's all that matters.
Cool. You have my compliments, man. Well, listen, I appreciate you being here, and we'll end recording, and you guys will maybe talk to you again.
Awesome. Thank you.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.